Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Mimansa Longevity Mastermind. This is the last of the series for the year. This is going to be a very exciting and important topic, and it's on the pillars of longevity. This is a recorded meeting. It's a mastermind series I've been doing for the last several months. And for those of you who want to catch up and see everything that was talked about, they are available on Substack and also on YouTube at the Mimansa Longevity YouTube site as well. We have several people that have signed up for this webinar. For those of you who have had a chance to sign up, you will receive these in your email as well. And next year, I'm moving into a second version of this mastermind series starting in 2026. And it's going to start to include some protocols and recommendations that I haven't been able to make in this year's free offering. That will be a membership-based mastermind that is closed membership for the Mimansa community. So if you're interested in learning more about the individual protocols, what kinds of nutrients would be helpful for longevity, what to be looking out for, that's a great way for those of you who are not currently living in California to have access to some of my information and protocols around longevity. So I invite you to stay connected, join the newsletter, and you'll be receiving more information about that as well. And you can join by joining the Substack as well, so you'll be able to switch into the membership model for that in 2026. So today I'm going to be covering some very beautiful information I've gathered over the years working with patients. And I've worked specifically with patients in the age range of between 70 to 90 and gained a lot of knowledge and understanding about what keeps people healthy and active all the way through towards their end of life. And having a background in functional medicine and nutrition, and longevity, I've really kind of honed in on some of the key characteristics for longevity. And it's how I often practice with patients, but it's also part of my longevity framework that I'll be introducing you to today. And at the end, we're going to talk about a special concierge offer that I have for those who are interested in signing up to evaluate their own longevity. You can do so as well. Now's a great time at the end of the year to make these investments in your health. Many people are looking for ways to improve their health and improve their cognitive function, their bone health, their muscle health. There's some amazing techniques out there, great supplements and ways to create better longevity in your life. But what I've realized that matters the most is having the insight, the knowledge that's available, so that you can tap into what does it look like under the hood in your own body. And you've been following along for the past few weeks, you'll know that the key to understanding our body is not just looking at the biomarkers that show up on the lab tests in their blood or your urine or serum, because that's often too late when it comes to prevention and making a difference in your health. So we want to start to intervene before those changes show up in your blood and your salivary testing and your urine testing. So we really want to start to do things preventatively. And what I've discovered in working with patients over the years is that looking at your genomics can make a really big difference in understanding what your risks are and whether or not they're going to manifest in this particular life is going to depend on what you do in terms of your lifestyle. So we start to design customized programs for you that are based on your individual profile, your individual genomics, and look and see what is starting to express itself, right? When it shows up in the blood and the urine or in a symptom, it's now expressing itself from your genome. So there's a very complicated, system of genomics and microbiome that's available to us. But the answer to it is really pretty simple. And that is making custom decisions. So making personalized decisions about your health. There's really no one size fits all diet. There's no one size fits all therapeutic even. And the way we're practicing medicine today is starting to look at personalization. So the current clinical scenario is starting to look at individual customized treatments for things like cancer. But when it comes to individual well-being and living healthfully and avoiding that cancer, we're not quite doing the best that we can in the wellness side. And so that's really why I created Mimansa. And what I'm doing in this program and this practice is helping people understand what's happening under the hood and creating preventative programs for people on a one-on-one basis. So I invite you into the practice. It's based out of Los Angeles. If you are in the area in California, we can work together one-on-one. I can work as your physician. But I also do offer a couple of programs, one which we ran a segment of this last year, which was the Kosher Ayurvedic programs. That's available broadly for anyone who's interested in doing a wellness program with me and learning more about Ayurveda, which is a natural approach to personalized medicine that's very ancient. It's been around for thousands of years, and it is highly effective when it comes to prevention and rebalancing your circadian rhythm. So that was something I launched last fall for a cohort, and we'll be doing more of that next year as well. That is an opportunity to stay connected and be involved outside of California. And in addition to that, I'll share with you today some of the concierge offerings that I have for more of a VIP program around longevity that I'm launching. So let's get started on today's program content, which is specifically around the topic of longevity. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen here. Let me just take a look. All right. So this longevity framework that I've established, like I said, I've been doing several different topics, and this is really the peak of all of them because it's bringing together the many different concepts, the many different things that we've talked about in the past several weeks, and putting it into a cohesive framework for longevity. Again, looking at things that I've learned over the years, working with patients and seeing what is it that makes people healthiest between the ages of 70 to 90 and helps them get towards a healthy version of themselves as they turn into centurions. Now, this is all available to all of us, and it is my belief that health is really our natural state. And the things that get in the way of our health are there in essence in the form of traumas, whether they're actual traumas you've been through or if they're micro traumas taking place on a cellular level. They are sort of taking you away from your natural state, which is homeostasis and health. So I developed this 7-pillar architecture for lifelong vitality and longevity. Remember that longevity is no longer just about chasing youth, right? It's really about living well for as long as possible. We're not trying to anti-age, we're trying to age well with strength, clarity, purpose, mobility, emotional resilience, and ideally joy in your life. Modern science and functional medicine, including genomics that I do here in my practice, and circadian rhythm biology and decades of clinical observation have confirmed the same truth. Longevity is in fact architectural. So again, going back to the structural nature of our bodies, the structural nature of our genomics, it is built, it is intentional, it's measurable, and it can be cultivated. So it's not something that's necessarily just destined, right? Yes, there is a genomic aspect to longevity that helps people live a long time, but it can be cultivated. And time again, I've looked at people's genomics and seen that their lifestyle has actually changed the output that is otherwise written differently in their genome. So for years of working with individuals across all ages who remain incredibly vibrant, I found that people who age well consistently have invested in 7 core areas of their body and of their life. So tonight we're going to explore what I consider the 7 pillars of longevity and the essential structure behind my longevity method. The first pillar is structural integrity and functional movement. So this is the structural nature of our body. Again, very important for our longevity. The second is cardiovascular and respiratory longevity. Third is neurocognitive and hormonal longevity. The fourth is metabolic and mitochondrial health. Fifth being immune detoxification and gut ecology. The sixth is sensory, oral, and skin longevity. And the seventh is emotional, social, and psychospiritual longevity. We can't ignore that last pillar. It's critical in terms of health and well-being. So let's break that down and the complete model for human lifespan that I've developed. The first pillar is structural integrity and functional movement. In this structural pillar of structural integrity and functional movement, this is things like, what is it that helps you move physically, move freely, and therefore age gracefully and remain independent for as long as possible in your life. This dependency state, although I have realized that for the most part, people do have support in order to help them live longer and healthier and happier in their life, it's really that independence, that ability to take care of themselves, to bathe themselves, to change, to go out if they want to have a social life. That is really that independence that helps people stay healthy and happy. So what does that take on a structural side of things? Often I look at people's feet, the arches of their feet, their gait. What is their balance and coordination like? How is your muscle mass and the strength in your muscle, in your body? What is your bone density like? How are your joints, cartilage, and posture? And what is your fascia like? Now, this is an area that we often ignore in conventional medicine, but it's very important for health and well-being, is how is their fascia and their mobility? Now, this pillar matters a lot because the loss of the structural integrity is one of the earliest and the most preventable signs of aging. What this causes is unsteadiness, increased falls, loss of coordination, back or joint pain, weakness or difficulty rising, foot pain, and neuropathy. Remember that foot health alone actually predicts fall risk, and neurological decline occurs years in advance when that's the case. So taking care of people's feet is actually a very important part of well-being and longevity that, again, in functional medicine, we don't necessarily do, and it's not really a part of conventional medicine either. It is a separate area in podiatry, but when we're looking at the whole body and the whole person, we really need to think about foot health. Muscle mass actually predicts longevity more strongly than cholesterol or blood pressure. So this really is a biomarker that we should be looking at in terms of health and well-being as well. What is their gait speed like? How are you walking? How fast can you walk? This often predicts cognitive performance. So the brain's ability to send cues to your limbs to be able to move quickly and steadily. There are also genomics that are relevant to this particular pillar in the body. We look at collagen strength, fast twitch muscle performance, bone density, and circulation to the muscles in the limbs. Here are some of the key biomarkers and tests that I often use when measuring longevity in patients. The first is the DEXA scan. We know that's looking at bone and lean mass. There are more advanced versions of bone scans that can be used as well that look at other different variables, but this is a good gold standard that I try to measure in all my patients regularly. The other is grip strength, right? So grip strength is really a measure also of your cognitive function, your ability to have a strong grip. There are many different things that this influences in the body. And so it's a really great marker for addressing whether or not somebody is healthy inside. VO2 max, or 6-minute walk test, is another great way to look at this sort of structural factors that are present here. And we'll see that again in a different pillar. Balance testing is very important and incredibly useful, especially as we age, because often one of the main reasons that people start having problems is when their balance starts going off and they have falls. Again, looking at the gait analysis, and doing sensation testing in the feet. So this is a really important part of screening and involved in most physical exams and longevity. We really need to look at the sensation of the feet and make sure that there's screening for neuropathy present, because that's another big reason that people tend to fall. Now, the next pillar in the 7 pillars of longevity is cardiovascular and respiratory longevity. So this pillar includes several things. The first being heart strength and the heart's muscle ability to pump that blood out of the body or out of the heart and through the body, and how efficiently it's doing that, right? So that's a very important part of this pillar, as well as the arterial health. What is the actual vasculature looking like throughout the body? How is the microcirculation? There's larger arteries, but also the capillaries. Is the blood getting to where it needs to go? Are you circulating well throughout your body? What's the lung capacity like, and oxygen utilization downstream of that oxygen actually getting to where it needs to go? How is it being optimally used throughout the body? Blood pressure, another key measure, very standard, but there's so much information that you can gain from knowing people's blood pressure when they're standing versus sitting versus lying down, and how that changes at different times of the day. It really is not just a static measure. It is a continuously changing measure that gives you lots of information, as well as nitric oxide pathways. Again, a measure of your vasculature, your ability of the vessels to dilate. Now, why does this cardiovascular pillar matter? Well, cardiovascular fitness is the single strongest predictor of lifespan. Loss of endurance of stamina is not just anti-aging, it reflects measurable changes in your metabolic and your vascular health. So what are some key factors in terms of accelerating that aging? If you have a very sedentary lifestyle, if you have sleep apnea, I often hear people ignoring this aspect. But again, when you're thinking about sleep apnea, it's not just about, whether or not you snore or whether or not somebody's bothered by it, which sometimes, can be the initiating factor of why people get evaluated. But it's also about oxygenation. Because if you have sleep apnea, you're not getting oxygen to all parts of your body that need it, including your brain, your muscles, and downstream from your lungs. So we really do need to address this and make sure that your body is getting the right oxygen that it needs, including your brain. Chronic inflammation keeps you in an accelerated aging state. So making sure that you're measuring your inflammatory markers regularly and reducing that stress and that cortisol. High lipoprotein A, which is often genomic. I will see lipoprotein levels elevated in people that are doing everything else right. And, there's still that risk factor that we have to measure and keep track of to prevent cardiac disease from forming, but also to just make sure that you receive that benefit of longevity from all the other things that you're doing to keep yourself healthy. Insulin resistance, again, completely preventable for the most part, but you won't know you have it until you really measure it and check it and follow it regularly. And environmental toxins. This is something that I teach about. Those of you who work with me know that I do particularly have a lot of interest in this area and measure this in most of my patients. And we work hard to look at your detox pathways to keep these levels as low as possible, because there are multiple effects downstream of environmental toxins, and it's listed in the cardiovascular section for a reason. There's direct effects on the heart. Now, here's some genomics that are relevant that we often look at. These are just a few. There are several others that I look at when I'm looking at your genome. And many of them are measuring many of the things we've talked about now. And some common biomarkers that you'll want to keep track of when you're looking at your longevity blueprint and looking at how that changes over time. So we've got ApoB, lipoprotein A, LDLP, HSCRP, VO2 max, which is in this section as well, and coronary calcium score. Having a cardiac test evaluation, working with a cardiologist, not just when symptoms show up, but also in a preventative manner as well as we age. doing an echo if needed, and then doing pulmonary function testing regularly. Again, VO2 max being a very important key indicator of health. The next of the 7 pillars is pillar 3, which I've classified together as both neurocognitive and hormonal longevity, because again, oftentimes we're optimizing our hormones for our organs and our bones to be functioning optimally, right? Along with the effects of energy and skin and hair and all the other external factors in terms of how we're received in the world. Internally, the hormones are also affecting our brain. So this pillar includes systems that determine memory, focus, mood, creativity, emotional regulation, sexuality, and overall coherence. So how is your brain aging? What is your memory, attention, and executive function like? How is your sleep and your circadian rhythm? How are your hormones, your thyroid, adrenal, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone? What is your libido like and your sexual vitality? How's your autonomic nervous system doing? And how's that sensory integration occurring between your vision and your hearing, right? So these are going to be important factors that we want to be testing and making sure that we're optimizing on those areas in our body. And again, there are things that we can do from an alternative medicine world, from the health and healing aspect of things that can promote these functions and to be maintained longer than even taking a supplement or having a specific medication. There are ways that we can continue to maintain this agility that is there in our brain function. So why does this pillar matter? Well, cognitive decline begins years, ages, decades before symptoms show up. So if cognitive decline in your family has occurred in their 70s, likely in your 50s and 40s, we have to start thinking about these symptoms, okay? So longevity should be on everyone's mind, I would say 35 onwards. And many of us sometimes don't start thinking about it into our 40s. These days, if you're proactive, that is the case. But do not wait until you're 70 before you start thinking about your longevity, because the things that we can do are most effective when we start doing them earlier. So sooner the better. So cognitive decline begins decades before symptoms: brain fog, low energy, hormonal shifts, mood instability, poor sleep, and difficulty focusing. Now, life can get stressful at times, and you can have deadlines and things that stresses that we put upon ourselves, family stresses, etc. Especially during the holiday season, there's all kinds of things that are on your mind. But really look at it as a chance instead to reconfigure how you're approaching your own health and well-being, and also the future of your health and well-being, because those stresses can cause these symptoms. So if you're having any of these symptoms, it's time for us to intervene and reevaluate, looking under the hood, what's taking place, and seeing how we can start to optimize these different pillars in your body. So that reevaluation looks at looking at some of these brain aging, neurocognitive, and hormonal key SNPs. So some of them are listed here that I evaluate. There's several others that are not on here, but we're looking at brain aging, neuroplasticity, stress response and processing, circadian rhythm genes, estrogen receptor function, as well as testosterone, mood, and serotonin pathways as some of the basic markers in terms of your underlying genomics that are putting you at risk. And then how is this expressing itself? We'll look at some of these standard biomarkers and tests, as well as doing a sleep analysis, maintaining these cognitive function testing, and if indicated, doing MRIs as needed. So maintaining that brain and hormonal function is really important for longevity. Now, next, let's go a little bit further into the body and think about the cellular aspects of aging as well. And this is the 4th pillar, looking at metabolism and mitochondrial resilience. This is an area that has received a lot of focus when it comes to longevity. In fact, most of the focus in longevity interventions has been in the cellular aspects of longevity. This is not a pillar that should be ignored. It's certainly something we need to optimize, But there are the full 7 pillars when it comes to longevity and well-being that are equally as important. So in this pillar, we're really looking at how the body's energy systems are working, right? So this is the microscopic cellular level. How are you regulating your sugar? How sensitive are you to insulin? How well are you metabolizing your fat? What does your cholesterol profile look like? How is that cellular energy production, that ATP production taking place inside every single cell in your body? What is your weight regulating like? And what is your metabolic flexibility like? They've shown that metabolic flexibility is one of the key bioindicators of longevity. Now, why does this pillar matter? Because metabolic dysfunction accelerates almost every single aging pathway in the body. And this is why so much emphasis has been given on this, because this is where therapeutics can be built in. This is where we can actually come in and intervene for cancer. So understanding this and from a scientific perspective has been very important. So we're still in the process of developing the science and this research, but some early symptoms, very similar to what we talked about earlier with the neurocognitive, but also including a few others. So if you notice that you're crashing during the day, okay, so middle of the day, you really need to stop, don't have enough energy, you're going towards the end of the day and you're like, I'm exhausted much more than I ever have been before. These are some early signs of accelerated aging in terms of a cellular aspect. Weight resistance, right? So your weight is just not coming off no matter what you're trying to do. Inflammation in the body, brain fog, we talked about fatigue, similar to the crashing during the day, skin issues. Now, the skin is a really great early indicator of what's taking place inside your gut health, but also on a cellular level. So we want to pay attention to anything that's happening to your skin. What is the quality of the skin? Is it thinner than usual? What is the temperature of the skin? What is the color of the skin? These are all aspects that we look at very closely when it comes to identifying this metabolic risk that is there inside the body, as well as food sensitivities. So again, skin-gut connection is quite prevalent, is common, and I often will see something show up on the skin that's equally reflected in the gut, the form of dysbiosis and multiple other gut issues. We talked about very specifically, we had a gut webinar a few weeks ago, and I went into this in a lot of detail, but food sensitivities are a big part of the evaluation from a genomic standpoint as well, because some of this is already written in your genome. And if you know that you have the propensity of this and your body is reacting, we sometimes do need to make adjustments in the diet in order to prevent long-term inflammatory responses. And so here's some genomics that we look at just more broadly in terms of risk factors. These are some of the most common ones that are in the science these days. And here's some biomarkers that we look at as well when it comes to evaluating your metabolic function. Many of them are currently being done, but some of them are not yet being done by your average primary care doctor visit. And so you do need to work with a specialist in functional medicine, longevity medicine, oftentimes to get these things evaluated. So I really want to emphasize that having a conventional medicine doctor's visit is not necessarily helping you towards, your longevity, because in longevity medicine, we're focused on optimization. And optimization is not just looking at what's abnormal on the lab test results. We're looking at what's within range often, but is not creating the optimal level for your body. And that is very much an individual determination. Okay, so there are some optimal ranges that we will look at and we often work with, but it really comes down to how you're feeling and what else is expressing in your body. We might have to adjust even further, even within the normal range of all of these test results. So I emphasize that point to say that just having a normal primary care visit once a year is often not enough when it comes to longevity. Pillar 5 is looking at immune detoxification and gut health. So this pillar includes the body's internal environment, but more on a communication level. So outside of hormones, this is also communication from the immune system, the microbiome communicating with your body. So your microbiome that has all of this these different metabolites that is producing, right? Because it's basically a whole cellular system in and of itself that is processing and going through this, these chemical reactions and producing these metabolites. Those metabolites interact with themselves, but also come back and interact with your other cells in your body. And that's how we often see dysfunction show up. It's because the metabolites are affecting not just the microbiome themselves and microbiota, but what they're producing is interacting with nutrients that you eat, with the food that you eat, and then with your individual cellular function. And then how is your body detoxifying? How is it pulling out the toxins from your food, from your water, from the air, and getting it to the right export systems, which is your skin, your urine, right? Your breath, we talked about this in detail in the detoxification section. So understanding this part of everybody's individual system for this pillar is key, because this is the function, the daily function that your body has to go to. The more optimally you do these things, the more likely you are to stave off diseases, pathogens, environmental toxins, and then therefore have less cellular decay, less autophagy, less free radicals, and therefore greater chance of biological integrity and longevity. So this pillar includes the body's internal environment of immune balance, inflammation, gut microbiome diversity, digestive integrity, liver and kidney detoxification, environmental exposures like mold, metals, and chemicals, and early cancer detection. So why does this pillar matter? Well, it's an imbalanced internal environment that actually drives some of the inflammation and other things that show up. So like I said, it's not necessarily showing up from your own cells. It can actually be a disruption in the balance of your microbiome, the cells at the next level, just outside of your own genome, right? So the epigenome is what it's called, and it's basically just outside of your own genome. That includes things like xenobiotics. So things that are environmental toxins is part of this toxic epigenome that often we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So an imbalanced internal environment can actually drive autoimmunity, chronic fatigue, skin rashes, brain inflammation, hormonal disruption, and mood dysregulation. So coming back to the key point here is that how you detoxify, how often you detoxify, right? How robustly you're doing this. You could either be doing this robustly naturally, or you may be needing support for that. But we need to identify that, whether or not you need support for that, and continue to do this as part of your regular cleanup process on a yearly basis. And so that is kind of the reason I created the Kosher Detox program, is so that people have access to this part of a regular sort of cleansing of their bodies. So the genomic pillars that are relevant here, so we've got the detox pathways from the glutathione perspective, we've got SOD2, FUT2, and MTRR. These are all very important to evaluate when it comes to detoxification, amongst many other SNPs that I look at. So what are some tests that we do? We're looking at GI map, zonulin, mold and toxin testing. We're often looking at liver and kidney function, inflammatory markers, and I also look at multi-cancer early detection blood tests. And as an optional part of the longevity concierge practice, we also include the whole body MRI as a way to evaluate for this particular part of our pillars. Number 6, so this is the 6th of the 7th pillar, sensory, oral, and skin longevity. So we talked about the skin in another part, but it is also part of the sensory aspect of our body. How well are we at perceiving the inputs that are coming in? Again, very important for health and well-being as we age, right? It's part of our formation in life, our early formation in life. We come in as these sensory babies, sensory beings, and at some point we kind of forget that this is an important part of our well-being, but we're interacting with the world. We're still doing everything with a lot of input coming in, And as we age, it becomes very important that we pay attention to this part of our well-being. And Eastern traditions often have emphasized this quite a bit, and we're just catching up in the West in terms of how important this is for our longevity. So first part of this pillar is vision and retinal health. So making sure that we're evaluating this regularly, taking a look at your retina, what's happening in terms of your eyes, right? We need to make sure that those are functioning well. Hearing and vestibular function, dental and periodontal health, oral microbiome is just as important as your gut microbiome, if not more important. Often diseases begin in the mouth. Skin integrity, collagen and elasticity, certainly important from an aesthetic standpoint as we age in terms of how we look and feel about ourselves, but also in terms of risks of cuts and bruises, and the actual elasticity of the skin as we age is very important to prevent the onset of further dysfunction and disease. And germ cancers, so making sure that we are constantly in surveillance of skin cancers. Why does this pillar matter? Well, the sensory decline is strongly linked also to cognitive aging, right? Because remember, there's nerves everywhere in our body and certainly all over our skin, largest sensory system in the body. And depression, loss of independence, and reduced quality of life. So oral health is also deeply connected to our cardiovascular disease. The oral microbiome is often where things start when it comes to a lot of inflammatory conditions in the body, including gut health, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic dysfunction. And the skin often is a reflector, so it shows what's happening inside on a cellular level and reflects hormonal health, oxidative stress, and detoxification efficiency. It has been shown time and time again that when we work on the inside of our body, through our nutrients, through our digestive capacity, we start to look better, we start to glow, we start to get all of those aesthetic benefits that people look for when they go to do many sort of skin treatments. But if you're not addressing the inside, if you're not addressing your internal health, those are often very transient and you have to do them over and over and over again. If you get to the root cause, then you need less of those external treatments, and they last longer when you do them. So what are the key biomarkers we're looking at? Eye exams, looking and specifically at measuring your hearing, dental evaluations, and screening for skin cancer and skin health, along with other aspects here, which include aesthetics and beauty as well in that pillar. So pillar number 7 is emotional, social, and psychospiritual longevity. I can't emphasize this enough. It's one of the most important pillars out of the 7, in my opinion, and is the most least emphasized in medicine. So I'll just really want to spend some time highlighting it here for you all. This pillar governs the nervous system regulation, our trauma patterns, our stress physiology, our emotional resilience, our sense of identity and purpose, pleasure, creativity, our connection and belonging in life, spiritual groundedness and joy, right? So this is critical for all parts of our life, from teenage years, from early childhood, teenage years, all the way through to the end of life. So it's really not just something you save to the end, but what I've realized and seen time and time again is somewhere in adulthood, from the teens to adulthood, we forget about these aspects of well-being and start focusing just on the physical body. And it's a huge disservice to what makes us truly human and what makes us actually feel well. So I want to bring this back into everybody's health plan to make sure that we are addressing this pillar very specifically as part of our well-being and our connection to self and our connection to others as well. So this pillar is not just a soft science, it's biology. We've shown that loneliness is as dangerous as smoking for our health and well-being. Chronic stress accelerates brain and metabolic aging. Loneliness is a big factor here. Emotional dysregulation disrupts our hormone and immune function. We have this whole segment of the hormone biology that I've talked about in that part of the webinars where I talk about trauma and emotional dysregulation. This is a key underlying reason why your hormones show up disrupted. And so when I'm working with patients, we often go there. The purpose aspect is critical for us as we age because, sometimes things that you would think are important become less and less important as you get older. And so it really comes back down to purpose. And purpose, how does that influence your cardiovascular, immune, and cognitive outcomes is a huge effect here. Key markers that I look at here are HRV, cortisol rhythm, what is your sleep quality like, and what are some psychological resilience assessments. Now, there are key therapeutics that we include here, and don't underestimate the importance of nutrition as well as nutrients in terms of supporting these aspects. If you're feeling better inside, you're going to be able to communicate and connect better with other people. So we're not separating the physical aspect from this emotional connection by any means, but just giving it a really important separate aspect in the 7 pillars of longevity. So integrating the 7 pillars in the longevity roadmap is what I do in the longevity program and working one-on-one with people. Remember, longevity is not achieved through one supplement or through one habit. It is created as a coordinated, intentional strengthening of these 7 systems. So your structure, your heart and lungs, your brain and hormones, your metabolism, your detox and immune systems, your sensory and oral health, and your emotional and spiritual life. When one pillar weakens, the others will compensate until they can't. So when all 7 are supported, the body becomes resilient, adaptable, and strong, and vastly more youthful over time. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about my 7 pillars of longevity. Again, this is a key part of the practice in Mimansa Longevity. I have a practice based out of Los Angeles. If you'd like to be seen in person, I see people online all over the state. So that is an option for people. If you can't make it out to LA, we can certainly start online. And I want to introduce you to the next level of my program, which is the VIP and concierge longevity offerings that I'm going to be launching for 2026. I'm sharing it with you now for those of you who want to invest in your health before the end of the year. Now is a great time to make these investments. Oftentimes people will put this under their health benefits in terms of their taxes. So this, again, there's nothing more important than investing in your health when it comes to your life, right? Nothing is going to go with you if you go in terms of a financial asset, right? Other than your physical being, your well-being, and how it is that you're living in this life today. So in order for us to do our work, in order for us to be productive, this core function is absolutely necessary. So really encourage you to not ignore this aspect of your well-being and to invest in your health. So for individuals that are ready for personalized medical leadership, working with me one-on-one, I'm doing high-level diagnostics with you and doing a year-long guidance. I have 2 offerings available that I wanted to share. One is a VIP longevity experience. This is a private 90 to 120 minute deep dive evaluation looking at your case specifically under each of those 7 pillars. We'll look at your genomics. We'll interpret your biomarkers. You can either do those with me, or I can have those imported from external sources that you would share with me. We would look at advanced screening roadmaps. So what do we need to do in terms of screening long term? And I would develop a personalized longevity blueprint. So this is something that you can take with you, you have it with you, and it's a great start for you to just understand what's going on in your body. So that's a longevity experience. And for those of you who are interested and ready, that you really do want to invest next year in your health, I've developed a longevity membership as well. This is a high-touch, year-long partnership experience where I'm your partner in your own health. Okay, I'm there to help guide you as an ongoing physician that you can access. We'll have genomic and biomarker monitoring, personalized protocols developed for you. We'll be looking at hormone and metabolic optimization, detox and nervous system mapping, and doing a full coordination of the advanced screening, many of which I've covered today, plus others. And this will be updated throughout the year. Now, for each of these offerings, the second offering, specifically the year-long concierge, I have only a limited number of spaces that are available. And so I'm offering it now before the end of the year for year-end tax credits. So really want to encourage you, if you're considering doing this, to sign up and get started. You can sign up just with the longevity blueprint, or you can jump right into the concierge program if you wanted to do that before the end of the year, in terms of signing up, and then we can get started and get all your testing in. My personal email is being shared here for those of you who are very serious about getting started. Please do reach out to me. This is mima@mimansa.ai. And I'm not sharing details about pricing except for those who are very serious and are interested in joining. I will be able to send it to you privately. So remember that longevity is not about resisting age. It's about developing the strength and the clarity and the capacity and your inner alignment to thrive across every decade of our lives. Those 7 pillars that we talked about today, those are giving us that basic structure, the architecture for that beautiful house that you've created. And what you choose to build within that house, what you choose to add to it, really becomes your future. So thank you for being with me tonight. Thank you for learning and being a part of this process for the past few webinars in the Mastermind series. If you were interested, you're welcome to go back and use the rest of this year to learn more. And remember, next year I'm launching into another set of series of masterminds that will be available. I will be offering a membership model next year, and this is open and available to those even outside of California that are interested in staying connected and learning more about my protocols and being a part of the longevity platform and framework. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey with you, and wishing you lifelong health, well-being, and a very, very happy set of holidays that are coming up with you and your family. Remember to pay attention to these 7 pillars as you go through the holidays: that social well-being, the community, the happiness, the joy. Really take time for yourself in rest and reconnection, as that's a very important part of the 7 pillars. I'm Dr. Mima with Mimansa Longevity, and I look forward to seeing you again as we go into 2026 to talk more about longevity.